To understand the difference between a necessary and sufficient assumption, we can start with a very simple example. If I were to tell you that my friend Bob is going to graduate law school today, then based on that, which of the following must be true? Must it be true that Bob got straight A's in law school? Well, not really, because there are plenty of people who get straight B's and still graduate law school. But must it be true that Bob got accepted into law school? Clearly that has to be true, because if it wasn't true, if he wasn't ever accepted into a law school, then there's no way he could really graduate from a law school. So how did I check if each one of these statements had to be true? Well, I simply imagined a situation where they were not true, or I reversed or negated each statement. And then I checked if the negated statement challenged the original argument that Bob is going to graduate. And when I said Bob did not get accepted into law school, I saw that if you did not get accepted, then you could not graduate. That's how I knew that statement had to be true originally, because when it's not true, the graduation cannot happen. So the original statement that Bob got accepted into a law school, that's called a necessary assumption, meaning if that assumption is not true, the conclusion cannot be true. The statement that Bob got straight A's, that doesn't have to be true, but if you get straight A's in law school, that really helps the argument that you're going to graduate. So we would call that a sufficient assumption. It's not required, but if we have it, it really helps our case. There are a few key words that let you know when the question is actually asking you for a necessary assumption. If you see the word assumption, or requires, or depends on, or which of the following must be true, those are 4 ways of asking for a necessary assumption, which means when you check to see if something is necessary, you can simply ask yourself, well, what happens if that statement is not true? Does it challenge the conclusion? And here's how you would do this on your exam. When I read the question stem, I notice they're asking for an assumption. So I know there's a missing piece in the argument. I then identify the conclusion, which in this case is cabinet making is not art. And then I ask myself, why do they think that? And the reason is that cabinet makers must have an eye to the practical utility of their product. Now I can dramatically simplify the argument. Cabinet makers must eye the practical utility, so cabinet making is not an art. And then when I go to my answer choices, I simply negate each one to see if it challenges the conclusion. And when I got to answer choice D, I saw my not. So to negate that answer choice, it's easy. I just cross out the not. Now I can see that statement says something is art if it has practical utility, which directly contradicts the idea that cabinet making is not art because it has practical utility. So that's how I know D had to be true the way it was originally written before I crossed out the not. Because when I negated that answer choice, it went directly against the reasoning that brought me to the conclusion. Let's try one more. Once again, I read my question stem and I see they're asking for an assumption. My next step is to identify the conclusion in the argument, which in this case is easily signified by the word therefore. So my conclusion is innovation in bicycle technology is limited by what is standard for competition in bicycle races. And then I ask myself, why do they think that? In this case, it's because the only cyclists interested in innovation are bicycle racers. Now I can dramatically simplify my argument. The only people who pay for innovation are bicycle racers. Therefore, innovation is limited by what's standard for competition. And now when I get to answer choice C, once again, I see it has a not in the answer choice. So to flip that answer choice, it's simple. Just take out the not. Now the argument reads, bicycle racers do demand innovations for things that are outside standard competition. And that directly challenges the argument. So I know C had to be true the way it's written, because when I make C not true, it goes directly against the original reasoning.